Happy Canada Day.
Or whatever it's supposed to be. I think some people want it to be a day of mourning. And
So yeah, I guess some people don't want it to be a happy day.
no, I think it should be a day of celebration. There are other times to mourn,
Celebrating watermelon?
which is true.
Yeah.
Celebrating how far we've come. I mean, resident schools have been gone for over 20 years. We still have survivors from resident school. And amazingly enough, despite all the rhetoric about a genocide, there are a fair number of survivors.
Mm-hmm.
The idea with a genocide is there should be no survivors. But of course what's happened is, what's happened with the faux gauches right now, the false left-wingers, is they're messing around with the language. So I've discovered something, an adjective. I'm going to call it Bellian, on the paradigm of Orwellian. Orwell talked about people who messed around with language, and he was basically talking about euphemism. Calling things like double think, double speech or something like that, double talking. War, the Ministry of War was something like Ministry of Peace. And faux gauches have been doing this for a long time. And it wasn't just Stalin. I mean, basically 1984 was about Stalinism. It wasn't about Margaret Thatcher's Britain or Ronald Reagan's United States. Get that straight, please. It was about the commies. It's like Animal Farm. Orwell made a few late noises about how it could be applied to fascism or Nazism, but it was basically written with the commies in mind. But what's happening right now with the various forms of moral panics going on? It's not just one. It's even a moral panic about moral panic. They're going around pointing at everyone who doesn't agree with them and saying they're in a moral panic. It's quite amusing. It's hyper-hypocrisy. It's not just hypocrisy.
Angel keeps watching every spoon go above her.
Yeah.
She follows it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll watch.
Oh, she didn't do it this time. She
She
just had to, just because I said now, she won't do it. It was really cute.
I know. So what's happening is global warming became climate. What was it before crisis? Climate.
Before global warming, though, it was global cooling, though, wasn't it?
Well, that's an amazing story. I mean, when the stories were coming out in the 80s about global warming, I'm going, what kind of spit is this? I was thinking it to myself. Because what I had been raised on, stuff coming out of the 60s, I was really a 70s kid. And Earth Day wasn't until spring of 1970, as I recall. I was going, I thought we were going to freeze in the cold and the dark eventually. And then all of a sudden, all these people who didn't believe in science, but have been saying, science shows that we're going to freeze to death because of pollution, blocking out the sun. All of a sudden they're saying, holy smokes, the science shows that we're going to cook like some kangaroo spare ribs on a barbie. I do think that global warming is happening.
Well, it is, but
I don't know if it's exactly at crisis level now. It might well be. Well, in a while, what we're at a crisis level is.
But if you're really worried about it, stop having so many children.
Stop having so many children. You know, we were hearing about the environment minister federally here in Canada resigning. And Paris, please stay down. She's really thirsty. Are you trying to get on top of that Coleman?
She's trying to get to your watermelon.
Yeah, she is.
No. Wow, she's really,
What are they?
really eager.
Come here, Paris. I lift you up. Come here, girl. Don't be working so hard in the heat.
Yeah.
You're getting to be an old woman right now. Are you thirsty?
Yes,
She's
she
thirsty.
wants it very badly.
You're a nice dog. James loves you, Paris. Easy now, easy. No, you got to stay up at the table. That's kind of not even Pauline and I go on the table. Not even.
Very eager.
Yeah. Do you like watermelon?
Mm-hmm.
She says yes. She loves watermelon.
She loves watermelon.
I'm going to give you a bit on the chair, okay? Just because you're a good dog. Even if you've got some challenges. So yeah, it was global warming, and then it was climate. It lasted so short a time. Climate change. There we go. I hardly, then it got changed to climate crisis, and within about a year of people yipping that, all of a sudden it's climate catastrophe.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, what's going to happen next? Because Holocaust means basically everything burned. And I'm afraid that's what it's going to be, climate holocaust. It's starting to sound like some horror thriller movie from the 50s or something, like some sci-fi movie. Climate holocaust. But yeah, we're talking about the environment minister. She retired.
But yeah, the thing is I don't know. I have maybe I've been moved a little bit by the people I was going to school with. I'm not sure, but it's when you look at things, objectively you're like, okay, well, there used to be, presumably there were dinosaurs in Alberta, because there's sure a lot of dinosaur bones here. So it used to be warm enough.
Oh, it used to be way warmer here.
That there were dinosaurs in Alberta.
Even in relatively recent times, much more recent than dinosaurs, I believe it's basically at this latitude, maybe a little. So, you find red soils.
Yeah.
Red soils may be similar to what you'd find down in the American South. I want to say Arkansas or Alabama or stuff like that.
And
I probably got the states wrong, but it's down south there. Red soils, what's happened is they've been leached.
I guess they were saying, like my grandma, the French grandma, their family used to grow grapes and for wine. And then all of a sudden the grapes wouldn't grow anymore where they were, around Paris. And so so they moved.
Yeah.
But I believe that was the story she gave. And then I was learning a while ago about how they used to grow grapes in England. Was that at one of those great courses?
Okay,
think
I've
it was.
forgotten about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was.
Mm.
And like maybe the 1600s or something like that.
Mm.
Then they couldn't anymore. It was too cold to grow them.
Well, they had for a while a little ice age. I think it maxed out somewhere in the early 1800s.
Okay. And then now they're able to grow them again.
Yeah.
So now it's at where it was. So it has, when you look at things over like a small period, then you think, oh my gosh. If you stretch it out
What you're looking at is noise.
over a larger
possibly.
period, though.
It's what they call noise. Possibly.
Possibly.
So when you look at the ice ages,
Oh, you want this? Okay, here. You have it.
there we go, Paris. Be
I
careful.
don't need it.
There we go.
I had enough.
So when you look at the ice ages, this is from your direction. This is earlier. This is later. What has happened with each ice age is it got deeper and deeper. In other words, cooler and cooler and cooler. We've come out of the last ice age, and but the temperatures where we at aren't nearly what they were like at the beginning of the big ice ages. The problem is how fast is the change happening? It's happening fast, but above and beyond that, it is animals are adaptable. Not just humans are adaptable.
I mean, the problem is with some that can't move, like the coral reefs. Australia.
There is a problem there, although,
So really, maybe what people should do is take some coral reefs and just move them up along.
Something like that.
Chunk them on up.
That's a possible
Yeah.
a solution. I don't know how good of a solution, but it's something.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, they're not going to be able to move.
Some or another corals survive that sort of thing. I think it's because it would be a slow process. Stuff melting and so on and so forth, sea rising.
I don't know. I mean, maybe.
It'd be a slow process where they could adjust. So there's a problem with it happening too fast with global warming. But another problem for animals is they just don't have corridors to travel anymore.
Well,
That's a problem with population. Same sort of thing with global warming. According to the United Nations, I'm taking this as a minimum, not a maximum. 70% of global warming is caused by the increase in global warming is caused by increase in population. It's absolutely irresponsible. We knew about problems with population going back, I'd say at least to the 60s, definitely the 70s. That's a long time ago. It's 50 years. Come on, people. It's basically, if it's 1960, it's 2 generations. And what we've got is certain segments, certain ethnicities are just blasting along almost at the same rate. And despite COVID and things like that, the death rate has been going down, down, down. So we can't continue on this track. Could I call it a population? I should call it population change. Oh, population crisis, population catastrophe, population holocaust, and stuff like that. We're going to face a comeuppance if we don't smarten up. But I don't believe in that. I'm calling it cacophonism on the paradigm of euphemism. What faux gauches have been specializing this last little while, getting in a moral panic about this, that, and the other thing, and overstating things. It's like hypochondriacal hyperbole. Like, oh my God, what's problem, massive problem, stuff like that. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say if you want to really solve refugee crises, if you really want to solve a problem of third world debt, if you want to solve the problem of much of the motivations for terrorism and just ethnic unrest, if you want to help solve global warming, if you want to solve any number of problems, at least get to the point where you're contributing, you're going to have to look at population. You can cut your carbon footprint down to baby size or Barbie doll size, and you're still going to have an environmental crisis if you don't control the world population. It's that simple. We're on kind of like the, it's not me that came up with the paradigm or the metaphor. We're on a raft here. And we're already, the raft's, is it getting ready to sink? It's going to sink eventually. I don't want to say, hey, like it's the water's up around our noses and stuff like that. But if we continue on the way we've been going, we're in trouble. And we've got to start changing now. We've got to start changing now. It's as urgent as people have been saying the climate crisis is like. I'm not saying it's a crisis, but it will end up that way. I want to see some responsibility in terms of rhetoric. And while we're on it, what I really want to talk about is the genocide here in Canada that the Catholic Church committed on its own members. Now, I don't know if the Catholic Church did this anywhere else. Here is a source in 1980. He's a communist, okay? Or he was then. And he said, it's funny to look at the way whiteys hit the New World. What happened is the Catholics, they came in and they asked the Pope back then, hey, are the people here, are they people or are they just animals? And the Pope basically said, they're people. And then he said, compare and contrast. A little bit later, you got people like the Puritans, the Protestants coming in. And they don't have anyone to ask. They're their own authority. So they ask themselves, are these people? Nah. And they went on and took over their land and ethnically cleansed them. Certain cases, maybe borderline genocide, but more ethnically cleansing. So, yeah, and was this guy a whitey who was saying that? No. He was from South Asia, which means his ancestors either came from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh. So, I don't know whether he was raised Muslim or Hindu or whatever, but there you go. Well, I don't think he was. He was very secular, but I don't know if his ancestors were one or the other. Might have been Buddhist.
So he was pro-Catholic?
Giant. No. He was just pointing out what obtained. Like I'm not thrilled about the Catholic Church. I'm not thrilled about the fact that it's the Pope, that institution, and all the hierarchy under it is a dictatorship. Yeah. I'm not thrilled about that. But a person has to keep in mind, like things like that aren't simple. And so I think what Indigenous people should be saying is, look, the Catholic Church has actually kind of encouraged miscegenation, intermingling. You go to Mexico and there's been a lot of mixture. Even in Quebec, traditionally, despite the worry about being pure laine, pure wool, nowadays, you look at a guy like Serge Savard, backbone of the Montreal Canadiens for many years, not just as a player, but as a management type of person. He looks pretty native to me, There was some sort of mixture, I think. And so I think the Scottish people that mix with the natives, they might have been Highland Scottish and maybe more Catholic. We tend to think of Scotland as being Protestant, but even now there's some Catholics there, and I think they tend to be Highland Catholic. So much so that of the two main teams in Scotland, soccer teams, one I think is called the Rangers. I think they tended to just have Protestant players. Can you imagine that? I don't believe in that. And then Celtic, the better team, or Celtic, whatever they call it. I think they had Catholic players in the Catholic team. So, of course, a lot of their supporters would come over from Ireland, particularly Northern Ireland, come over and punch out Protestants and stuff like that, because they hate Calvinists. Like there are a fair number of Protestants, Scottish Protestants, came over and helped the British maintain their hegemony, or whatever you want to call it, in Ireland, not just in Northern Ireland. And I got to admit, I'm from that kind of stock, but I do know that I've got at least one ancestor who would have been, at some point in time, a follower of Saint Hudibras. So the name was Mulholland. Anyway, we still got a little more.
You do. You have.
So I was talking to someone recently, and they were saying about what happened with the resident schools, Catholic residents. It was a sin. It was a crime. Well, sin, I don't like that kind of word, but it was a crime of, I think, possibly, I wouldn't call it negligence. I think the intent was to try and help Indigenous people out. I think it was misguided, but I think that was the intent. And of course, if you do something with intent, even if you intend to do well, I think the doctors, for example, that were, trying to feed me Ativan or antidepressants.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, when you have a bunch of, if you have the Catholics who are saying, well, they're people, and then others who are saying, oh, they're just savages,
or animals, or whatever. Yep.
Then, I mean, it makes sense that the Catholics would be teaching them and trying to make them.
Yeah, that's what's happening with resident schools.
They'd be good members of society.
If you're Holocausting people, why are you building schools?
Yeah,
why are you feeding them?
Yeah.
Do you feed someone? You feed cattle that you're going to eat. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So when people use Holocaust, for this kind of situation, it's absolutely wrong-headed. It's not even just over-the-top hyperbole.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any logical
sense at all. It's absolute garbage. You cannot say stuff like that. There are people out there who are sitting on the fence, much less people are over on the other side of things, and they're looking at it and saying, I know what a genocide is. A genocide is what ISIS was doing in Syria. They're seriously whacking a lot of people. A genocide was happening in Rwanda way back when. What was that, 25 years ago?
Incredible.
They were killed a million people or so in the space of, we'll say, a few months, but I think it was a few weeks.
I think, yeah.
So, with Germans, the Germans in the space of maybe about 3 years, during World War II, they whacked 6 million Jews. They whacked a lot of gypsies.
That's some serious numbers.
In a short time. So, how well has the genocide been working on natives? Well, the population has been going up since 1920. That's not 2020, it's 1920. 100 years. The population went down. Was it because people were killing people, or was it because, 1920 might be significant because of what happened. Apparently the Spanish flu selectively hit indigenous populations here. They say certain groups were just wiped out. And I want to know this so-called mass grave in Kamloops. I want to know when that happened.
Yeah.
Was it around the time of the Spanish flu?
Yeah, because mass grave looks bad.
It looks bad.
Yeah.
And my source was indicating it was separate from the grave yard where they had the 55 that's reported and recorded.
Yeah.
And my source says that that one was the one where the 55 were reported was kind of like by the church. And again, I'm a victim of my sources, or source in this case. And then the mass grave was on the school yard. Now, I don't necessarily trust this source. I'm going to have to check up lots of other sources and see what obtains. Because this source was very enthused
Where did
about using the
Paris
word genocide to describe it. Cultural genocide is just an oxymoron. You cannot ultimately kill off a culture the way you can kill off a people, because you can revive a culture so long as it is it's revivable, so long as stuff is recorded. So yeah, I mean, you'll get Catholic people who've been bad. Bishop Landa, I think, in Mexico way back when, in the wake of Cortez.
Are you done with this?
No, I'm not. Yeah, Cortez. He destroyed many, if not all, of the, or almost all of the codexes. But I think they've been able to reconstruct those from memory. They were able to decipher. I don't know about Nahuatl, but Nahuatl is how you should say it, I think. And reconstruct Mayan stuff. The Popol Vuh they reconstructed. I think they reconstructed. Maybe there's a codex that survived. They've been able to decipher the language, all that sort of stuff. But Bishop Landa apparently was at least kind of like the Catholic Church, back in the old world, they kind of shouldn't have done that kind of thing. It's not as though it's official policy of the Catholic Church. Same sort of thing with the bulldozing of the gravestones in that one. Where was that, in Saskatchewan? I don't think the Catholic Church went and told this one priest. I mean, he's just a priest, or maybe he was a bishop. I don't know. I don't want to overstate the case. There's been too much overstatement of the case all the way along in so many of these issues. I want to try to get it accurate. I don't know. Like, did they let him do it? Did they know what he was doing? He shouldn't have been put in that position in the first place. He should be condemned if he's still alive. Condemned in person, and if he's dead, condemned posthumously by the Catholic Church as well as by the Canadian government. So, I just want a little bit of responsibility in the people who are throwing around accusations and stuff like that. You've got to understand that the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church has apologized. The Catholic Church should apologize, but they were severely misguided. They were allowing people to abuse children in terms of corporal punishment. Mm-hmm. Of course, corporal punishment was used in lots of schools back then. Mm-hmm. I don't know when they phased it out. They were, I think, still using corporal punishment at my high school.
Well,
of course, it was a separate school.
I had a vice principal threaten me with the strap.
Yeah. So.
And yes, I did.
Wow.
And that was
that
terrible.
Would have been around 1990, eh?
There were two teachers, and I got one that I think he ended up becoming a principal. He was tough, and so there were two grade 5 teachers, and I got he would play sports with the boys and stuff, and so they tended to like him, and I was kind of scared of him. But
most phys ed teachers are scary. So.
And so I was talking to some people from the other grade 5 class, and I was like, well, you're lucky because your teacher seems nice. Mm-hmm. And they said,